Thank you both so much for being here. My name is Vinny. I'm the senior editor at Backstage. Of course, we're joined by Lily Gladstone and Jillian Dion, the stars of Killers of the Flower Moon. How are you doing? How's it going? How has this time been for you?
Oh, crazy, but also wonderful. It's,
Heck,
I think the best part about it is getting a chance to see everybody again. It's, our line of work, you get very close with people very quick. And in our case, especially when you're playing sisters. And yeah, it's um, it's been really nice to get to spend the time together.
well, right before we started recording, Jillian, you said something to the effect of this is just like the audition. I'm very curious what what that means and what the audition is like.
It was a lot of technical fumbles. I am not, I was like born in the era where like we just started to get to use computers in like third grade and there was like one per classroom. So I
Mhm.
prefer pen and paper. But with the audition, at one point my sound went out, so no one could hear me. So I was like running around my house trying to find like an aux cord set of like earphones because I'm also old school, but now I have AirPods. So whatever these are called, earbuds, AirPods, AirBuds.
Buds, doesn't matter.
Buddy
Um,
Paul.
yes, and I think that was that it, Lily? Was there anything else that
Yep.
happened?
I remember that your sound wasn't connecting, so then you went and got the AirPods and put them in. And I remember like watching you go through it, and I could see how composed you were, but I knew what panic was probably going on the surface. But I also remember thinking, it's like, girl, you got this. You're so good. You got this. And that was the first time that we met because I had been cast already, but so I don't think that had been announced yet. So we weren't technically announcing it. Then it was just the chem read for the final casting process of the sisters. So yeah, I remember you coming in with your southern dialect. I'm like, yes, mama.
Well, it all worked out. And here we are, Killers of the Flower Moon, several SAG Award nominations, including Outstanding Ensemble, as well as 10 Oscar nominations, including, of course, Best Picture, and of course, the historic nod for Lily in Best Actress, and also Scott George in Best Original Song, another
Yes.
history making.
Mhm.
So I'm curious, as the artists behind this piece of art, where does the award recognition sort of fit in for you? What does that mean for the people behind the scenes of this? Where does the sort of the recognition come in for you?
I think it's a testament that people connected with the film the way that we hoped, the way we intended. And I mean, I'm just so happy that given the nature of how the film was made in such accordance and in such lockstep with Osage creatives the whole time, the entire structure of the story changed because of what Osage people had to say, scenes, you know, settings, wardrobe, all of it, it just was very shaped by Osage people. So I think it's just so important that if I happen to be at the point in history with this film that got this recognition, carrying this moniker of like first in the category, I'm sharing that with an Osage nominee. It feels right.
What about for you, Jillian? I'm always curious. You make the movie, you're focused on the work, you have no idea what's going to happen when the movie comes out. Can you sort of describe the feeling of experiencing other people experience the movie? Like sort of that next wave of like it's years later, and you're like, oh wow, now we're getting feedback when really before it was just about the work.
Yeah, the feedback it's varied, obviously, and I think that really opens up um, an area for discussion, which is what I want the film to do: raise awareness, but also open up a dialogue for the topic at hand in the film. So I think being in it and being a part of it was such an important journey for all of us involved in the Osage. But now, after getting to share the work with the world, having them decide to see how they feel about it, and hopefully it changes some opinions, and hopefully it gets some conversations going.
Absolutely. If I'm not mistaken, Jillian, you were working at a brewery when you got the call that you had landed this role. Can you at Backstage, we're very interested in the moment, stuff like that. Can you tell me about that moment, where you sort of, you've been in acting, you've been auditioning and stuff like that, but everybody has their side gig and stuff like that. Tell me about that call and what that was like, and what then, you hang up the call and you're like, oh, now I have to do this. What was that whole sort of range of emotions like for you?
It was crazy because like the audition process, it was put to a stop because of pandemic. So we all kind of just maybe moved on or whatever. But when it got picked up again, we were like, I personally was like full force. I was like, I'd been rehearsing these lines despite the fact that we didn't know what was going to happen for the whole year prior to. So it was like it was in my bones. I could like recite the lines in my sleep that I was given to audition with. So I felt really confident and comfortable going into the audition process itself. Um, and then I was at my brewery job. I believe it was a Tuesday. It was December 4th when I got the call because it's also my dad's birthday. Um, it was, I'm like shaking now thinking about it. I was slinging beer. There was like two customers that were regulars in there, and I got the call and it was my agent, and I could not answer because the anticipation had been building since the audition. Um, so I get the call and I run outside and, tell them I'll be right back and hopefully don't see anyone else going into the door. And just have my agent tell me what's happening. And I was like overcome with emotion. Like I was like smile crying and like just like pacing like a crazy person in the downtown east side. Um, so it was a lot. It was a lot, and it was I feel like it was meant to be. My dad is the one that got me back into acting, and he's been my biggest supporter through all of this. So I think getting the call that I got the part on his birthday was like pretty phenomenal. Um, and I still went back to work at that brewery. It recently just shut down because they could no longer afford rent. But I I imagine, I don't know. I just can't not support where I started off. So
Absolutely. It's just such a lovely, lovely story. And it's sort of, it speaks to that dream of, you can be doing, it can happen out of nowhere.
mhm.
Um, as you mentioned, Lily, there was chem reads and stuff like that. Because one of the hardest, I'd say it's not easy to sort of on screen portray that very familial feeling of siblings, especially sisters, that easy comfort with each other. So can you tell me a little bit, both of you, about that process, even in pre-production and before cameras even rolled, of sort of finding that easy connection that you have to play siblings.
It's funny, Janae helped us remember the other day that all 4 of us are also only children. So, I
Not much
think
to pull from, yeah.
yeah. I mean, as an only child, like, honestly, I think that was, something that bonded me to Leo too. But there's a thing, like, people have perceptions about us being, like, getting everything we want or being spoiled or whatever, just, especially, like, I can imagine sharing resources with siblings. But, I also know that all of my only most of my really close friends are only children, and I don't know if Jillian feels the same way, but when you make friends as an only child, they almost become your siblings. It's like you just bond with your friends in a little bit different, more intense way maybe than kids with siblings do. So I feel like in the process of us getting to know each other and taking time and spending time together and forming and finding our dynamic as the 4 of us, but then also what our individual relationships would be, that was it was in some ways just happened really naturally. But then there was also a great amount of intention with it, and specifically thinking about the scene where the 4 of us got together in Jillian's living room and rewrote this scene of the 4 sisters kind of gossiping about these men in the language. And a lot of that had come from just one line that Molly had that was really difficult for our language teachers to translate. It was a concept that didn't really translate cleanly.
Mhm.
So we sat down together and, we really all just embraced this opportunity to show more of who these women are, that we really only got that one scene together, the 4 of us. So it was great. We all crafted the line that we speak in that scene. We all came up with that scene together in English. And then when we sent it along to our translators, they were like, yeah, this works, this tracks. So yeah, I think that process, Jillian can talk about it too, because she was also there. But um, yeah, getting to, form our own character, then also like talk and display who we thought that character would be with each other, kind of talking through our dynamics. Tantu asked us some cool questions on set, like, what do you think the four of you were like when you were little girls? What would you have been like when you were kids? Yeah, and I think we all kind of collectively agreed that because we're all the big sisters and Minnie was the baby, that we were all trying to be mom to her. We would probably get a little bit tangled up with each other and rivalry over who gets to hold the baby, who gets to be with the baby. And I think that really punched it up for all of us when we shot that scene because Minnie is the first one that we lose. She's the first expression of grief that we all have. And yeah.
Yeah, I think
I'd love to hear what you remember about this. As the person playing, of course, like you mentioned, the youngest sibling, which is always going to be. I'm the youngest. I understand, I understand what it is to be that. It's always going to be a special position. So I'm curious, what your experience was that scene.
yeah, like Lily said, we um it kind of just happened organically in terms of how our relationship kind of all started, just because we all have different times on set. We'd all hang out with each other separately or like, one on one at different times. Um yeah, I really embraced playing the youngest. I did like the idea of like having that dynamic in the family. And the youngest is always like a little bit like, like not picked on, but like, you're it doesn't matter what you say type thing. But I think I really tried to play with that. Like I tried to make the character like, maybe a little like sassy if I could, with the dialogue or yeah, with the material I was given. So I wanted to play that dynamic of just being like, like push me one more time and I'll like, you get it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much all of it. And like I was there for 3 months, but on set a handful of times. So again, we got to spend a whole lot of time with each other, getting to know each other, and we all pretty much lived in the same residence. If not just a 30-minute drive away. So there was always access to that person, or the women in general. So
Really, when we spoke for the podcast, you mentioned how important that scene was. That's sort of, and you mentioned it's really the only scene we get with all the sisters together. So I'm curious, on the day of actually filming it, what constructing it was like. We see what we get in the film, but was there a lot that sort of was just you guys speaking? Was there a lot that we don't get in the film? Was it just? I'm just curious how that was constructed on the day. Was it very close to the script, or was it just speaking?
We didn't have the luxury of going off script because it was in the language.
Yeah. Well,
So there was, since I got to be in that world a little bit longer than the other sisters, by the end of the summer for me, I had reached that point in my Osage language that I was able to start constructing my own sentences. And I could kind of improv a little bit, but this was early in the process. So we were sticking very much to the lines as they were. Um, the play that we got to have was in just kind of tracking whose coverage it was because there's such a sisterhood with Native women, period. But like for me, like Native actresses, I think I confuse some other actresses sometimes because we get to know each other. A lot of times we're in the same room auditioning for the same roles. We're getting the same callbacks. We're getting the same like sides for things. And there's been a few times in my career where it hasn't gone my way, but then immediately I'm like, who got it? Who got it? Who got it? And then I'm just so excited for whoever did. It's just such a joy to see talented Native women where they belong, and I feel like we all, because we had an impeccable pair of casting directors who just kind of saw who would work in these dynamics as the script outlined and as the Osage birth order kind of dictates personalities are. So yeah, I think a lot of that day was about tracking where the camera is, who's getting the coverage. So we're not stepping on each other. Everybody's really getting that moment to shine and display what they can do. And I mean, like Jillian's work in that scene for me is like it's my favorite work, as it's so surprising. Just this funny little sly sister who's got like this little wicked sense of humor that she like wears just right up her sleeve. And honestly, the way that Jillian created that line, created that character, just totally immersed in that. I also really appreciated the line that she wrote, because it gave everything about her character and what she constructed wasn't a big way of foreshadowing for me, was things that Molly was going through. So the way that Jillian was playing the illness taking hold of her, I was watching. And I was seeing how she was remaining like humorous and buoyant on top of this, this illness that's just dragging her down from the inside. And then also her relationship with her husband, because we didn't want to just have these women that were blindly in love with these white boys. It's like there had to be some reason they were in these marriages. And it's still like not really known if Bill Hale was responsible for Minnie's wasting illness. But we all talked about that as like, what dignity do we get if we're just kind of like blindly falling in love with these guys? So that was Jillian's whole improvisation about him being like, yeah, he's a possum to you, but he's a rabbit to me, bringing it to the thing. It's like, okay, there it is. That'll keep a couple together. So yeah, her in that scene, and then also just how quickly and how tragic it is that she seems to be the sharpest one there about like calling it out. He wants our money, and then she being the first one in all of it to pass. It's I don't know. Yeah, on the day it was just like really enjoying knowing where the camera was, how we could play with each other and play each other up. Yeah.
I love that. And this, this goes for sort of both of you, but Lily, it's based on something that you said. It was something about needing or just wanting a lightness between takes. You can't live steeped in the drama. I'm curious, how that informed your performance on screen. Like how much needing that sort of ability to step aside immediately after these grief heavy scenes to find laughter and community and stuff like that. How did that inform your performance? And if there's any sort of particular moment you can remember when that need for levity between takes was particularly necessary.
Lily, may I?
Yes, please.
It actually just like reminded me, it was like pretty much just spot on what you said. It was the moment that I had with Mr. De Niro, and we're doing this scene where he's coming and looming over me. And it was a very serious scene, and I was ready to submerge myself in what it meant to be that character at that moment, or that woman at that moment. And he comes up to me, and we just met this time, and he like looks at me and he's like, are you ready? And I was like, yeah. And then he like puts his hand on my shoulder, and he's like, looks me dead in the eye, and he's like, what if I did a little dance right now? And I burst out laughing, and then Jason starts laughing, and then Marty yells action. So I have to like jump into like this very emotional scene, but he like cracked this joke beforehand, which I think gave the scene some substance in some way, and just like really lighten the mood into like something very serious that was about to happen. And it's a nice reminder, like when I left that scene, it was a nice memory to have, that what we're doing is very serious, and the subject matter is important, and it's accurate and it's truthful, but like you can't get lost in that whole thing for your soul and for your spirit. So that was just something that came to mind when you said that.
Well, thank you so much for the image of De Niro doing that. That's amazing. Thank you so much. And I also remember Lily mentioning that all told, there was something like 200 tribes represented on set, whether it was extras or consultants or stuff like that. Can you speak to a specific moment where you most felt the impact of that sense of community? I'm sure it was incredibly helpful throughout, but was there any specific moment you could think of where you really felt that all of these different tribes sort of coming together to make this one thing?
I think the ones that stand out are the two scenes where you have everybody together.
Mm,
The wedding, like the wedding was fun. People were enjoying it as if we were all at a real wedding. um, and it was exciting, seeing just how fine the costumes were, how impeccably constructed the entire world was. It was so easy to just be present through all of it. And because there were so many of us and we would holding with all of our chairs felt like at a wedding when you're in the bridal party, everybody's kind of holding a room together and like anticipating like the big moments. The laughter in between takes was fantastic. The amount of energy that was present to just celebrate, it really did feel like it. The way it is in the film is the way it felt to shoot that whole segment. Um, and I remember like when the four of us, it's just a flash of a moment in like the whole wedding montage. But when we're all standing in line, the bridal party is standing there to take this photo, this like
mhm.
just captured moment. I remember the settling into that take and some of the fun little things that we were nursing out and how, I don't know, Janae and I, who plays Rita, she was standing on this side of me. She, she's got such an infectious laugh. It's, it's one that you definitely notice and that you definitely miss. It's not around. And it had come out again in the funeral scene, talking about everybody coming together and being there, and just this communally understood joy of a wedding and grief at a funeral that your whole community turns out for. But Janae and I had been talking about just kind of pushing back. And Jillian, you remember too, when we were in some of our early meetings and people's like memory and understanding, Native and non-Native people of like this era of Osages, like it's something that I like pushing against personally in my performances, but just this idea of people being real stoic. And it's like stoicism serves a real purpose and it depends on who the audience is. But when you get us all together, we just laugh. So when we were like lined up waiting for this photo, there's way more of that scene that was shot than ended up in the edit, but it's like we had an opportunity, it felt like, to just be sisters, like Molly checking in on Minnie, making sure she feels good, Anna in the background flirting with Minnie's husband, Janae down with our sister-in-law played by Stormy giggling about our brother. It's like this very like tableau. There was so much going on in that scene, and then we all settled into it to get real stoic for a second and take this photo, because those photos of just still face, like, that's how people remember or would think about people of that time. But just sheer nature of what the camera was, then you had to be very still to catch it. So yeah, it was nice how naturally the big scenes where there needed to be communal grief, communal joy, um, just kind of latched, and then naturally our dynamic with each other was just so sisters and giggly and attentive and all of the things.
I love that. So as we sort of, come to our end of our time here, I because we are backstage, we're a very acting focused organization. I'm gonna leave off with a very practical acting question. This movie requires both of you at different points to play sick, to play an illness, to play whether it's caused by something or not. So I'm curious from a pure acting standpoint, how did you approach that? What was your preparation? What was it like on the day? How did you go about it?
Jill.
Yeah, I think I just like I knew what it was, and like I kind of did research, and you couldn't really find that much information about peculiar wasting illness. So I kind of just thought of it sort of like, being poisoned to death, but I thought of it more of like like a terminal disease type scenario where you're slowly getting pulled down. And Lily said something earlier about this, is just like there was something festering inside, and it was slowly from the middle going outwards, and that's how I kind of felt it. And when I submerged myself in the character, I lived in that, from the moment I put my wardrobe on till the moment I took it off. It just felt so real, just because I think I allowed it to. Um, yeah, and but also taking off my costume at the end of the night and being able to remove myself from that and get to like a spiritual place was really important for me too. But yeah, it was just like, and it just, I felt it. I don't know how to explain it other than that.
And Lily, is there any tips or tricks of the trade before we go?
Um, I mean, it's a little ironic that during the wasting illness portion of it, to kind of accomplish this wasting part, I was on a pretty strict diet, but that actually made me feel really good. And it gave me, you know, I've spent a long I've spent long periods of my life on and off around people with various illnesses, and just the recognition of how much energy it takes to be sick. Like it's a tremendous amount of energy to not feel well. So it was kind of remarkable that I was able to be in a place where I was actually taking impeccably good care of myself during that process, because it was incredibly exhausting. Um, and a lot of, like I said, I studied Jill and just could see from, especially when we meet Minnie to where she is at the wedding, just this the same spirit but diminished and more quiet. It's like she wasn't playing the illness, she was playing Minnie. And there was like, it felt, I could feel that around her, these like physical weights that she was carrying. It's just like the spirit's like a little heavier. So, and knowing that, in talking with some community members, that there were a number of different things. We got a long list from a lady in the community named Margot, who gave us a list of poisons that were being used at that time. Belladonna, rat poison. In my research, I surfaced with Molly's family. Her grandson, particularly, is the one who told me and Leo that they figured it was likely arsenic and morphine. So it's really interesting to hear Jill's process of just feeling something like this core of something rotten that's spreading out. It's like arsenic in your body is eroding all of your tissues. You're starting to have bile seep into your system. Your nervous system is being attacked. I mean, it really is just like a rotting from the inside out. And just all the neurological damage. And Molly, on top of that, having diabetes, she was never really used to feeling good. Yeah, playing an illness and knowing that it was something that I needed to play out and also heal from. I needed to kind of choose what exactly the poison was and know what it was doing to my body, but then also know what the insulin was doing, because the insulin was also making her better. So yeah, I think just, if there's advice to other actors, take care of yourself. If you have to play sick, try and be healthy. It's going to cost way more energy than you think it will. Um, I don't know, like for me, I know some people really need to create it and stay in it, but I need the 180. And especially if you're dealing with trauma of other people who are living people, and then you're picking at the wound, like an open wound, really, for a whole community. I don't want to find catharsis in their trauma. I don't want to live in that performance longer than I need to. I want to make sure that everybody on set is having a good time, that good memories are being formed for these kids. Like all of Molly's children, like, were real kids, and being on set's not that fun when you're a kid. They make sure they've got memories and they're not getting traumatized by like performative aspects of it. Yeah, I mean, take care of yourself. I mean, the most The most tangible piece of advice I've gotten from an actor this entire campaign circuit was from Kate Blanchett, who told me to take adaptogenic mushrooms. Take care of yourself.
Um, that's a really wonderful place to wrap up. Um, two staggering performances in an incredible movie. I could talk about it for hours and hours and hours, but thank you for having this brief window to talk to me about it. Thank you both so much for being here. We really appreciate it.
Thank
you, Ann.
you.
Amazing. Thank you very much.